video I'm just going to do it as a bit of an introduction really to printing, almost like I suppose block printing in the home. I tend to use lots of different methods, so as I say, this is only an introduction just to share with you some of the different things that are out there that you could explore more fully perhaps on other YouTube channels. You'll notice, I say that, you might think, well, that's not printing, Claire, because it's embroidered, and it is embroidered, and I don't know if that will focus in for you, but you will see that it was originally printed underneath, and I've used the printed areas to provide me a space in which to do some slow stitching. So, and I've done all sorts of things like blanket stitch, slip stitch, chain stitch, French knots, herringbone. Actually, there's a nice herringbone here. I put sequins and beads on, sort of a seed stitch going on there, almost like a bullet stitch, but this one is actually beads, so it's just a straight stitch with beads on. So as an overall design, that kept me quiet for a little while. I don't know if you can tell the size of it, but if I put my hands down you can probably tell. So, and how that started was really just a print. So this is what it looked, well, this is what I call a misprint. This isn't the one I actually used, but that was the print. That was a block that my daughter had created using her 3D printer. So she created the design and then I embroidered it. So that's quite, as a print block, that's actually quite big. But you can make these things up with smaller blocks and create your own design. So I'm going to talk about the actual blocks. Traditionally, you can get blocks like these, and these were carved in India, and they work beautifully. And I'll explain how they work in a minute. So there's those sort of printing. You can also use, believe it or not, just your regular clear print, clear. I don't know if you've ever come across these, but these particular ones are from the Craft Works in Huntingdon, and these work. You sort of sticks itself to a block, printing block, and you just print with it. I'll show you that as well in a minute. So that's that one. Believe it or not, I've explored and found out that those children's foam shapes you can get, they actually print quite nicely, and I've just stuck them on what was a lid of a very nice box of chocolates, which I'm sure you recognise. I've just stuck them on, and again you can print with them. As I said, they're just the foam shapes out of a children's craft pack, so they print quite nicely. There's also, if you want to create your own designs, there's this stuff. It's polystyrene. It's like a printing polystyrene. It's proper It's called polyboard printing. I bought this in a school pack. However, you can use something very similar. On the bottom of a pizza, some pizzas come on a base very similar to this. And what you can do, you can carve and score into it, or you can actually cut out shapes. So that's quite nice. What I've also discovered is you can use it for like mono printing techniques, which means you don't actually ever damage the surface of it, which is quite good. There is jelly printing out there as well, but I've never found jelly plates very successful. I've also got this stuff, which is a modern version of lino, but it's for printing, and you can pick that up at craft shops. A lot of, well, I say a lot of them. Art Van Gogh, I particularly got this from Art Van Gogh. Whether they still stock it might be up to you to check. And then what you do is you have a carving tool and you actually carve the shapes out. So here are some that I've carved and used on some of my projects. When you do carve, you have to remember it's the raised area, the bits you leave, that's the bits that actually print. So these are my designs that I've created using. I'll show you the book in a future video on what I did with these. Right, so how do you use them? Well, let's have a look, see. I always have a whole pile of scrap material near my desk. It's a good idea to have it ironed. This isn't ironed, unfortunately. But yeah, no, I would recommend ironing it beforehand. What you could also do, you can actually, this is already just plain, if I wanted a plain book, but you might have scraps of like this. I've got hand dyed materials I've got scraps of and I want to use up. So these are just dyed pieces. So let me go through the process, very simple processes. For the finer stamps, such as the ones that you would use in card making, these clear stamps, I would recommend sticking to the StazOn product, and believe it or not, StazOn will work not only on paper but on fabric. And there's obviously different brands. There's the VersaFine, will give you the finer mark. The StazOns have actually colours, so I'll show you how to use that. What's nice about them is you can just apply the ink to them like that. I mean, you can use two different colour blocks, colour inks if you want to get sort of like a variegated colour effect. I'm just going to do a single colour. Hopefully you will be able to see this colour, it's not too pale. Let me just grab one of my things. And what I do recommend is newspaper, because not only does newspaper protect your surface, it gives you a padded surface to print onto, and you should get better contact. And then you just give it a good press. Okay, let's see if it's worked. And it has, and it actually does produce a very delicate image, very pretty image, and that you can work into any of your textile products that you make. So there's that. You can also use these inks with your own homemade printing blocks, and you can. This one is actually a rubber block that has been mounted, so obviously they're good for that as well. So as I say, let me just show you. I'll use the VersaFine this time. You can choose to press down. I tend to press down if it's got a handle. That's quite dark. The VersaFine are incredibly rich and dark, and let me just pop that on there. And this is, as I say, just a regular rubber stamp. Good old traditional rubber stamps always work beautifully. That's really nice. And if you iron them, as I say, they're set. So that's that. When it comes to these types of stamps, the carved stamps, and even these ones really, you're better off using fabric paints. Now fabric paints come in various forms. This is a Deco Art one, and these, it says here pre-wash and dry fabric. This particular one I purchased in the works. So yeah, always worth checking out your local craft works stores. This one is a different product. I think it's German. I've had this a very, very long time. And I say very long time, we're talking at least 20 years. And it's still okay. Now, it was expensive at the time, but having had it for that long, it doesn't smell too bad. They can go off. Yeah, so you can get some foreign brands. This is one probably more well known. Again, you'll notice I always seem to get them in the sales, I think. So always worth looking in the sales. And this one, this is a fabric paint. These are really sweet. I picked them up in Tesco's one year. So it's always worth checking supermarkets. The quality is not going to be brilliant. If I'm doing lots of big printing, I actually do have, I buy massive great bottles of printing inks. Let me just see if I can grab one to show you. Oh, must forget Dylon. They are beautiful to use. I like using Dylon. They're a nice consistency. And in fact, the big bottles I buy, you can see it's a massive bottle. It's what size is that? Doesn't say the size, but that is one hell of a bottle. And yeah, that's dyed on, but that you can still hear it's still nice and runny even now, and just by holding it in my hand you can see the size of the bottle. And that's, I got them from J&M Marketing. If they're still around, worth contacting those for these big bottles. They only come in the primary colours though, so they're good. Right, now how to use them is the question. I find just getting a very small, let's just zoom out a little bit, I'm a bit zoomed in, just a saucer. And what I might do, you can get a paintbrush or a spoon, or I have a terrible habit of just tipping it onto the plate. I say terrible habit because you can see you get drips everywhere. I make a mess. See, look at the mess I make. Once you've got your fabric paint on your palette, do wear an apron. That is a good tip to have. I tend to get, you might recognise this, an old kitchen sponge. You don't need anything expensive. It's just an old kitchen sponge which has seen better days. And I just tend to pick up the ink. You can blend these colours, and to be honest with you, I actually found that it doesn't matter what the brand is. I'm sure the companies themselves would say you shouldn't mix them, but I have found it doesn't matter. And if I pick up, let's do this one. I do this one. Don't put too much ink on, that's the tip I'm going to give you, like that. I think I might have put too much on, but let's see. Move the paint out of the way. I'm going to do it on this piece of scrap material I've got here. I'm going to put it there. Just press down. Giving it a, you'll see I'm giving it a wiggle. Actually in India they give it a bash like that, but I think that hurts your hand. And you'll see they print quite nicely. So that's that one printed. Let's have a see how my peacock feather prints. Let's take that out of the way. Get a bit of, oh, actually, put it on there. Will it fit on there? No, I'm being stingy. Let me get another bit of fabric. I'm just picking up the paint on the side, dabbing it on. Not on my fabric, that would be silly. Dabbing it on. Picking up some darker tones for the edge. Okay. Pick it up. Now these are harder to put down. This is the drawback with not having a handle, but you can attach a handle, you can stick it to a piece of wood if you're doing lots of printing. You can also use a roller to give it a roll. I'm always worried it will move when I roll, so I'm just pushing down. I'm going to lift it up, and there we go. There's my printed peacock feather. So that's that method. So we've now done clear print, the clear stamps for regular card making. Actually, we've used the rubber stamp on a block, wooden block, my own hand carved block, and we have done, where's it gone? Here it is, a wooden block from India. I mentioned the polyboard. Here's the polyboard technique. Now what you can do is, I say, you can carve, most people carve into it, but I always find it destroys the polyboard. So what I've discovered is if you put your ink on it where you want the ink to be, let's just say, I'm just just using the sponge, putting a good amount of ink on there, getting very messy in the meantime. I then use what's called a detailing tool. It's a rubber tipped tool to remove the paint. If you haven't got one of those, you can actually just use the end of a paintbrush, and you can see, you can draw into it, you can squiggle into it, you can, I don't know, just be really wacky with it. If you don't like it, not keen on that myself, bit of a mess, isn't it? I can go over it, so I'll go back over that, not keen on that. So I'm just going to do something a bit more, I don't know. Do I like that? I could keep going until I'm happy, but to be honest with you, I'll stick to that. That will do for now. And then I'm going to print that off. I'm going to get a piece of material, and this time I'm going to lay the material on the top. And at this one I would get a roller, especially if you've got a bigger piece of polyboard, because the roller will give you a much better press. I can lift it off and you can see there's the design, and what's quite nice is you can actually overprint on that, so you could layer up your print starting off with the light colour and building up your layers. So there's that for you. Now I mentioned earlier that you can use children's foam shapes, stick it onto a lid, so that's here. I'm going to show you how that comes out. Let me just pick up some ink. Like that, and again you can just use it like you would a normal print block. I'm just going to put that on the bottom here. I might show it to you how it overlays onto the other product, so I'm going to overlay it a little bit. Press really nice and hard. And you can see how that could build up. It's really quite pretty actually. And you can stitch all into there, beautiful stitching. You can follow some of these swirls with some stitching, put some beads in the centre of flowers, so you can do all sorts with that. You can really keep building up the design and introduce other colours as well. So anyway, that is, hopefully you'll have enjoyed watching, participating with me in this little introduction to printing. As I say, I haven't done it with any finesse, but just wanted to show you that there was a variety of things out there to explore and experiment with, and there isn't just one way of printing, there's lots of different ways of printing. So what I'm going to say to you is enjoy getting your hands covered in paint and printing on fabric.